We open this valve and it backfills the tanks from the bottom instead of from the top. Well guys, welcome back to Red River Living. I'm Mike, and today we are talking about watering. And here in North Texas, we have some really good years as far as moisture is concerned, and then we have had more years than not where we just get really dry during the summertime. And as you can see right here behind me, I have some tanks set up on our trailer right here. I have a trash pump setting here that we mounted to the trailer. The trash pump was bought at Tractor Supply, and then a lot of the hardware here was bought from Tractor Supply. The hoses right here, a lot of the PVC pipe was bought at Lowe's, I believe. But the main hose and some of the other connections, I forget. I think I went to an oil field place here in town and bought some of my on-off connections also. My son gave me some of these ideas on this stuff, but this stuff right here, as far as plumbing it. To kind of give you a little bit of background, in 2014, we had been in a drought for several years, but in 2014, it got extremely dry. And I lived in town, and we had a bunch of hedges, and my wife insisted on me figuring out some way to be able to water and be able to get water. Well, our local sewer plant, and that's the only way I know to describe that, all that water processes through the plant, and once it goes through the plant, the solids are removed from the water, then the water basically is discharged downstream. Our city was already using this non-potable water to water our softball fields, our baseball fields. The school had it set up to where they were watering all of their grass, which to this day, that is how that is done in town here in BURKBURNETT. That non-potable water is reused here in town. Well, they had it set up for a while to where we could pull into the plant and fill up with water. And guys, it was a very minimum cost to us. It didn't cost much at all. And I was in the mowing business at the time. And once I started hauling water to the house, one job led to another job led to another, to where I was hauling water. I think I was working 16 to 18 hours a day that year. Debbie literally called me one day and said, "Mike, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm coming back from such and such. I'll be coming by the house in a minute." She said, "I've cooked 2 hot dogs. I'll get in a truck just so I can see you for a change." But anyway, that's how we were back in 2014. So one of the things that I was cautioned on when I basically started running this idea by a couple of guys I went to church with. And one of the things the guy told me was, he said, "Hey, be careful of the tanks that you go and choose. Some of your tanks can have corrosive type chemicals in them, and they need to be cleaned up really well." I made a phone call, and guys, going off of what I was told, these tanks were removed from a cruise ship, and they had ranch dressing in them. These are 350-gallon tanks right here. You can tell they don't have the metal cage, but you'll notice down here at the bottom, they already had this on-off valve on the tank right there. So I didn't have to buy that valve. That was already on the tanks when I purchased these tanks. And in 2014, I believe I paid $100 a tank at that time. And I bought these out of Archer City, Texas, is where these 2 tanks came from. In my initial setup, I just had my 2 tanks plumbed together. And we went up to the sewer plant. And at the sewer plant, we would take this valve off, and we would stick the hose in and have to hold it into the tank, which they had a tremendous amount of pressure coming out of that hose. It was a 2-inch hose, and you literally, once you turned the valve on, you had to lay over on the hose to keep it in here. There was several injuries from that. Some older men were hauling water at that time also, and the hose knocked a couple of guys off the trailer. Well, hey, I had a guy come through, and I seen him hook the hose in system. So at that time, I just had a L right here at this point here, and it fed into the system. We put a T in right here, ran a hose back here to the back, and once you get back here to the back, you'll see I have an on-off valve right here. And the sewer plant plugs in right here. We open this valve and it backfills the tanks from the bottom instead of from the top, which made it a ton safer at that point. So as you can tell, we've got the valve on the back there, and that'll all depend on where you're getting your water from. Like I said, here in North Texas, here in Burke, we have now set up to where we don't have to drive inside the facility. I'm gonna video all this in just a few minutes. We're gonna run back into town and show y'all how this all works. Just wanted to give you a real good idea of how I got my tank set in here. Got them strapped down individually. Got valves on each tank, and then at your pump up here on the front, you had to have an on-off valve also. Otherwise, the water would have come in the hose and just went straight out the pump. You had to be able to turn it off here at the pump itself. So we've got two valves that we can shut off each end of the hose. So in order to move this water, I went to Tractor Supply and bought this trash pump. The trash pump is basically to pull water out of a road ditch or something like that. Well, I mounted it to the trailer, and I put quick disconnects on this so I could remove my hoses. And as you can see, this is how this setup would work right here. And I had bought with the pump when I initially started this, I didn't know just how rough I would be on my hoses. Well, I watered the first time at my house. We had pecan trees. Of course, squirrels get in the pecan trees, and they had cut some of those pecans that year before. I started dragging that blue hose around. Next thing I knew, I had holes all in my blue hose. I knew I had to do something. Young man that went to school with my son was in the fire department. I called him up and started talking to him about fire hoses. And he's the one who directed me to go online and purchase actual fire hose right here. And this is, I don't know how many layers it is, but I purchased these offline, and you can go online and look either on eBay or Amazon to purchase these fire hoses. And I don't remember, I just remember buying them offline back in 2014. I can't tell y'all exactly where I bought them. But these hoses are 10 years old, and I purchased two different sets. I wore 150 foot, they're 50-foot lengths is what these are. And I had wore out 150 foot of this hose that year. And I went back in and purchased another. When I say wore it out, we were going to the banks, watering at the banks, dragging them across the asphalt. We were dragging them, across everybody's yard I can think of in town. So the hoses just took a tremendous amount of abuse. But what I will tell you about fire hoses that you got to be cautious of is fire hoses is not, and I do not know, I'm not a plumber here, so I cannot tell you other than the fact that these threads are not pipe threads. They are just for fire hoses. And I learned that after I had purchased my fire hoses, and I had to go into Wichita Falls to purchase this one piece right here. And believe it or not, they wanted $75 for this one little old piece right here. I thought they saw me coming, but I had to have this adapter to be able to use my fire hoses to be able to hook it into this piece here, which this piece comes from Tractor Supply. And guys, at this time, I can't tell you about the threads and all on this. It's something you'll have to do a little bit of research on yourself there. But anyway, the fire hose screws in, and all this stays connected right here. That way I didn't have to unscrew it and screw it. And this is how it's got locks on. You push the buttons, it opens. And then I would just lay my fire hose on top of that. Well, guys, we are already hooked up to the trailer. We're fixing to run into town and show y'all how we get the water, how we hook up to that system up there. So y'all just stay with us as we're headed to town. It's about a 5-minute drive here. So guys, back here in the background, you can barely see it. There is a purple tank. When we first started this, that is where we were going in to get our water. Our city went in and put in this water transfer station right here for us to be able to get to water 24/7. We didn't have to worry about the facility being open or nothing. We could pull up, get our water right here. I'm going to show you how it was done the old way, then I'll show you the new way, how we used to do it. So when we used to, we'd climb up here on the top, and then we had a hose just like this one. And we would put the hose in the tank like that and then turn it on to fill it. You just manually had to hold on to it, and then you had to pull it out, stick it into another tank. That was the old way. We'll leave that off. And this is how this works now. So now we pull up to it, hook our hose up, close it off, open this valve, make sure the front valve is closed. The front valve is closed, and both of these valves now are opened up. And this is how the tank feels. The city set it up to where we went down, registered. I've got a code and a password to get into the system, and then I plug my gallons in. So then right here, I've got my information in. Now I select my gallons. We're going to put 710 gallons in it. Hit enter. Hose is connected. Then we hit start. Now, the one thing you got to watch here, and we'll show this in just a little bit. One tank, this front tank fills faster than the back tank, and I really don't have an answer for that. But I just stand out here and monitor that at this point. As you can tell right here, see the difference in the level of water? So what I'll do is I'll just wait here, and when this tank fills, I shut that valve off right there. And then I'll open it back up once we get to the house at that point. And it takes about just under 4 minutes to transfer 710 gallons of water. So guys, as you can see right here, you can tell how much quicker this front tank is filling over this back tank right here. And I'll just watch this one, and as it gets really close, then I'll bend down here to the valve to shut it off. This was really nice that the city put this in for us, and they did it to where, you know, it'd take a load off of our people running the sprinkler systems, because you didn't want your trees, your shrubs, and stuff like that to die. So that was the reason they did this and allowed us to start doing this. We're paying for it, but it is very, very cheap. At 710 gallons, I'll probably have enough to overfill this tank. That one's plumb full right there, so we'll see if it shuts off in time or if I overfill it with 710. Gonna be perfect. Shut our valve off. When you disconnect, you're going to have some water right here. Just want to stand back from it. The one thing I will say right here that you really need to be sure and be able to do is hang your hose up, and then you see how this hose is sticking out? You want to move this hose back out of the way. Somebody's left it out and somebody's run over it already. And those are very expensive hoses, so just be sure to lay the hose back out of the way. We'll go to the house now, and I'll show you how this water comes out of the tank. Turn our valve back on that tank that we had turned off there. With buying a fire hose, you can buy these nozzles also at Tractor Supply. But once you buy a fire hose nozzle, you got to have fire hose to be able to hook up right here. I ended up buying a couple of these. Some of them spray a little bit different than others. So close this off. We'll open up this valve. This is going to allow the water to come from the tanks into our pump right now. You can actually hear it coming into the hose. It just, the gravity of this system actually starts working at this point. Well, guys, as you can tell behind me, I've just got the water opened up. The pump is just pouring it out right now. And what I'm doing is just flooding the yard. Y'all have seen where we've set up a watering system with our well water, trying to keep the grass and stuff alive. It just didn't make sense to use our drinking water that we had for the house. That's why I was hauling this water. And here I've got it just set up. As you can see, I'm just flooding the yard and letting it drain across the yard itself. What I have found right here by doing this, I don't have as much coverage, but I can haul several loads a day. But once I soak the yard like this, it really lasts. We're October and still hitting mid-90s right now, and that's why we are still watering, trying to get the grass in good shape before winter gets here. And that's why we're hauling the water that we are. And we're using non-potable water, water that's been reclaimed from our city, which is just a huge asset for us here in BURKBURNETT, Texas. Well, guys, as you've seen our system right here, if you have any questions or anything, just write down there in the comments. Just shoot me a question if you got a question or you want to make a comment. I'll try to answer those best I can, give you some information that I might have left out. If you come up with something, just give me drop me a comment down there in the comment section. I'll try to answer that for you. Well, guys, as always, hey, we appreciate y'all watching. We appreciate it if you'd like to subscribe. We'll see y'all next time.